Hello and welcome back to another new edition of Windows and Current Affairs, and today we follow up with the course of the pandemic of COVID-19 or Omicron worldwide, and particularly in Egypt, as it's showing very mild atmosphere compared to other countries. Of course, because Egypt is naturally blessed and because also the government have been applying the utmost precautions. And of course, good news, as it was also announced that Egypt was chosen to manufacture the mRNA vaccines in the Mediterranean region and Africa as well. Of course, this could be an appreciation for Egypt's awareness concerning its health awareness, and also concerning the pandemic and the development, the scientific development, the boom Egypt is going through. Today we're going to be touching on that and even more. We're very delighted to be having with us Dr. Magdy Adly, and he's Senior Manager, Health Insurance Authority, and Professor in Hospital and Total Quality Management. Good evening, Dr. Adly.
Good evening. I'm very appreciate to be here tonight, and good evening for our viewers.
Right. Let us first talk about the good news that the WHO have chosen Egypt to be amongst 5 African countries to manufacture the mRNA vaccine technology needed for the vaccine production. And of course, this is a modern one. That is going to be applied. First of all, we need to know the situation or the circumstances behind choosing Egypt amongst or on top of the 5 countries to manufacture the vaccine, and also what is the importance of that particular vaccine.
That's okay. First of all, I'd like to thank the efforts of our government or our governmental efforts to contain the pandemic of COVID-19 through taking precautionary measurements and availability of vaccines. And as you know, there is 2 big problems, or 2 big global problems last few times, which is COVID-19 and climate change. And thanks for God, because of the decrease of the curve of infections in Egypt these days. And that, by the way, reflect a good situation for the hospital situation nowadays, because you know, when the infection of or COVID-19 infection increase in the community, that converts some of hospitals to a quarantine hospital, so that they delay some operations, or making a waiting list for other operations, for not for COVID-19. And now we have a little number of infected cases which need hospitals or need ICU or ventilators, so that help or delay the pressure on hospitals, so that we have enough ICU to make another operation rather than COVID-19. This is for the first. For choosing Egypt as a regional center for manufacturing mRNA or vaccines, or mRNA vaccine, since the beginning of crisis or pandemic, Egypt was planning to transfer the technology of manufacturing vaccine here in Egypt through our great company for manufacturing vaccine, which is Vaxera. And we managed and succeed to do that through a Chinese vaccine. When we managed to produce the vaccine of Sinovac here in Egypt, and that increased the vaccination rate in Egypt, and we now reach to more than 40% of population have been vaccinated, and we are going to be more, so that if we manage to reach for 70% or 80% of population as a vaccinated population, so that we can eliminate or contain the virus, and that we are going, this step we are going to that step. Then WHO, there was a problem for availability of vaccines for other countries, like especially African countries, and WHO sent their experts here in Egypt to see the infrastructures of manufacturing companies in Egypt, and if it's good for production these kinds of vaccine, and we're supposed to know that vaccines need a certain operations or certain processes, rather than the other one, which is a Chinese one, because you know Chinese one are depending on traditional way for production of vaccines, but the vaccines of mRNA need a specific technology for production and certain conditions of refrigeration. They sent their expert here in Egypt, and they said Egypt is as infrastructure is very good for production that kind of vaccine, and even Mr. President thanked WHO for choosing Egypt as one of some African countries to be a central, a regional center for production of that kind of vaccine, and that, by the way, have a good benefit rather than even saturation of production of vaccine, which needed to be consumed locally. First, you have enough exist to export for African countries or other countries, and that will be good for the financial feedback. And the second is the medical reputation in Africa. When you export some kinds of vaccines like that and used by other countries in Africa, so that you make a reputation, Egyptian reputation for medication or for Egyptian medication, so that you will be authorized there in these countries, because you know some other countries, even not belonging to Africa, by the way, having a good medical or pharmacological reputation in African countries. So we need to make replacement, or to be the because these countries are very close to Egypt, not to other countries. So that if we manage to export these vaccines to these African countries, that will give us a good medical reputation there, and that reflect for other medication, not even vaccine
the
only.
vaccines.
And even Mr. President, His Excellency, in every event, he said we must develop the scientific researches and medical production in or Egyptian medical manufacturing, so that we can enter to that African market for medication. This for choosing Egypt as a regional center for production of Myrna. And by the way, Egypt have a good private companies for production of medication, and they are famous and are known there in Africa. But that step of production of mRNA of vaccine, like Pfizer vaccine or like Moderna vaccine or even AstraZeneca vaccine, will give us the priority for these countries to be a first direction of to get medication as a first direction. And by the way, we can talk even about what is the difference between the manufacturing of vaccine like Sinovac vaccine and the technology of manufacturing of mRNA.
Right. But before we delve into that, we need to know what is the importance of that particular manufacture, this modern manufacture or modern technique of Myrna or mRNA manufacture of the vaccines. How does that jab is advanced to be, or could it be advancing, helping in standing up to the threats of the COVID?
This is a good question. Myrna or mRNA vaccine is a moderate or a recent technology for manufacturing of vaccine, but by the way, it is used before with other vaccines, but for COVID, it's the first time to be used in COVID. And these Myrna vaccine are depending on a small part of RNA from the protein spike of the core, which spike is
of the virus?
Of the virus, and make a reproduction of that small part of RNA, and then injected direct to the to people, so that the body create antibodies against that small part of.
How do you attain the virus itself?
How
is the virus attained? To be able to.
They separate it and they make.
From blood?
From blood,
infected?
Yes. A sample from blood, and then inject it in some. Sometimes some mites to be reproducing it, to make recouping of
so the blood
virus.
Is filtered?
Yes. No, they separate the virus itself. They can separate the virus itself.
They withdraw it?
Yes. And then they make reproduction of the RNA of the spike only, because you know the virus is like a core with a spike containing an RNA inside. This is the virus, and
so
outside
they're very tiny components.
Yes, very tiny component. And by the way, outside the body is not alive. It's not alive.
What does that mean? That's a very good opportunity to be able to explain elaborately the nature of that particular virus.
Yes.
So it's a microscopic component.
It's a microscopic organism, but
it's a living organism.
No, it's not living outside the body.
It doesn't live.
It's not a living.
So why do we keep sanitizing all the surfaces and the clothes?
To kill it, but
since it's not live outside the body.
Yes, but it's no, to be sure that it's clean, but it's become.
And how come? And another question: how come we become infected?
It's not. No, I don't mean it's not alive. It have RNA only, but it's not a live organism.
Okay, but it does live.
It can't reproduce. It can't reproduce or make reproduction outside the body.
It cannot reproduce
Yes,
itself.
but once it come into the body, the
It
RNA of
reproduces it.
yes, recopying of RNA of that virus.
I need to ask a specific question here. So what is the danger of outside the body? I mean, on surfaces, on clothes, in the air? I mean, how is
No.
the danger posed? I mean,
Danger of the virus outside the body equals 0.
so how do we get infected?
But
or infection?
when it infected or when it get inside, the danger is become when the virus be inside
It
the
becomes
body.
doubled.
Yes,
Right, but
duplicated.
at the time it is in the air or on surfaces or on someone's clothes or someone sneezes or anything. Where is exactly the danger?
The danger is to be transferred. But if it's be outside the body, it can be a danger, or there is no danger from the virus. But once it's come to the body, it start to be dangerous.
We need to continue over that, but right now we have with us Dr. Islam Hanan, and he's a lecturer of pharma endocrinology. And good evening, Dr. Hanan.
Good evening.
How are you doing?
Good evening to your guest. Hi.
How are you doing, sir? We
fine.
were talking about the choosing Egypt amongst top 5 African countries to manufacture the mRNA technology of the vaccines against the COVID. But first of all, we need to talk about the decline in the numbers of the infected in Egypt and the reason behind that.
Yes, that's actually correct. So currently we are witnessing a decline in the numbers, mainly in the mortality, which is the main concern of the wave. We are monitoring very carefully the mortality rate. And actually, the peak itself has been declined since the beginning of March. We are witnessing day after day a decline in numbers, whether in cases or mortalities. And by the end of this month, we'll be witnessing a break from the 5th wave. This break, maybe it will be for 1 month and a half or 2 months, and then we can witness a 6th wave, which will be slightly different than the 5th wave in terms of mortality. We are expecting to have maybe 50% less mortality in the 6th wave due to, of course, inoculation. We have a lot of jabs so far. We will be exceeding 50% of the Egyptian population taking the jabs, even the booster dose for the 3 vulnerable population, old age, comorbid patients, and the healthcare workers. So currently, on an African perspective, we're also witnessing a decline in the 6th wave. However, there is another wave, of course, in Asia right now, which is a peak, which can give us some predictive measures for the 6th wave that we'll be witnessing in a 2-month notice. Of course, currently, because we do have an Omicron, BA.1.2, we can say that the hospitalization rate is maybe half the Delta cases that we've witnessed before in the 4th wave. We can say that the protocols now is all available and it's all locally manufactured, and that's why we can say that we don't have any shortage in terms of protocols. It's reflected on the percentage of discharge from hospitals and from the patients, and that all contributed to the low rates that we are witnessing right now.
This new technique of jab industry or the vaccine industry, how is it going to lessen or threaten the intensity of the pandemic later on in the coming, let's say, coming months, coming years?
Yeah, that's a very important point, because actually the main focus currently is African continent, because we do have the least percentage of inoculation. We're talking about less than 30% inoculation among the population. Some countries we are talking even less than 10%. So it's very important that we have focal points. We do have vaccine hubs in Africa. In the African European Summit, it was declared by the World Health Organization that Egypt, among other 6 African countries, will be selected for pharmaceutical technology transfer, of the mRNA. So the mRNA technology is the most advanced technology, and the platform of the pharmaceutical transfer, it will actually put Egypt in the pioneer location in Africa to be able to satisfy all the local market in Egypt, as well as exporting the jabs to Africa. This will help on a local level, of course, for the local quantities, but it will also help the African continent to reach the 70% inoculation rate by August or September. By this, we can say that maybe the WHO, if we reach that target, they will declare COVID-19 is no longer a pandemic, but rather just a normal disease. So this point is very important, that we can help actually the pandemic to fade and to be reclassified if we can actually successfully export that jabs to African countries.
Totally understanding that particular point that you raised just right now, but a possible question, are these new techniques of vaccines going to stand up or going to be used for all upcoming strains of the pandemic, or the same thing?
Yes, that's a very good point as well, because when we start the transfer itself, it will be manufactured based on the current variant. So it will be against the Omicron BA2. And for example, if we are witnessing maybe in 3 or 4 months another variant, it will be higher in terms of effectiveness rather than the old vaccine manufactured for Delta, for example. Currently, both Pfizer and Moderna, the mRNA vaccines currently available, are developing their new versions against Omicron. It will be released the next month. So we will finish the pharmaceutical technology transfer maybe 6 months from now or 8 months from now. So by now, the vaccines, all of them will be actually made versus the new variants. And what's actually good about the technology transfer is we do have the platform that we can change the vaccine itself every season, because Omicron will not going to be the last variant. So maybe the next season we do have a new variant. We're not going to be waiting for the plants in the US or Europe to remanufacture new vaccine. We'll be able to manufacture our own version of vaccine versus the new variant, which is actually present either in Egypt or in the African continent. So it's very strategic, it's very important in terms of economics, and in terms of export and the GDP, it's very important. In terms of health policy, it's very important for Egypt, and as well as the manufacturing of new vaccines, not only for COVID-19. This technology will enable us to have the mRNA technology itself.
Right.
It will be helping in oncology medications. It will help in another vaccine innovative trial. So it will put us we are currently the first country in Africa in terms of manufacturing medications and vaccines, and in terms of exporting. But it will put us at the first country in terms of innovation as well.
Right. On that very optimistic note, Dr. Islam Ainen, you are a lecturer of pharmacoeconomics and pharmacoepidemiology. Would like to thank you, sir, very much, and you have a beautiful evening. And he just said the same thing.
Yes.
So the mRNA are good
Very
news for
good
Egypt, because it could be used as
for others,
a new wave of technology, medical technology, for all types of vaccines.
Yes, but I'd like to add something for what Dr. Anand said. Dr. Anand is a big famous name. There is every time there is something called modification of vaccine to be compatible with the type of variant.
Exactly. I just asked that question.
Yes, and he answered that's right. Every time, according to the wave, as Dr. Anand said, we have, like now we have Omicron BA2. And by the way, Omicron is not one strain. It's like 3 strains, BA1, BA2, BA3. But the most famous one is BA2 because it's like 1.5 transmitters than the first copy of Omicron. And which it is the most one spread now in all over the world, which is BA2. But thank God because of the symptoms of BA2 is less than even Omicron itself, and very delayed than Delta and other variant of COVID. But Dr. Anand said that the technology even of Myrna manufacturing here, vaccine manufacturing here in Egypt, or the technology itself, it will help Egypt not even for COVID-19 vaccine only, but for others kind of even in oncology medicine or other vaccine rather than COVID, so that it will be continue, not for COVID only. And that will help us for manufacturing that kind of medicine depending on mRNA technology, and then we able to export that for other countries or for African countries.
Of course. But again, mentioning that there are many strains for that variant, the Omicron, B1 and B2 and all that.
Yes.
The three of them, or whatever could they be, are they the same symptoms or different symptoms?
No.
Because Omicron is already different from the COVID.
From the COVID. Look, as published from even WHO, when the virus beginning as a epidemiology crisis, by the way, and when it's become and its rate of transmission become faster, the degree of dangerous decrease as it's be more faster in transmission.
So it declines in its danger, side effects.
Yes, or side effects. And right now we see that theory is right with COVID-19. COVID-19 start as a dangerous wave, then up to Delta wave, which was I think the fourth wave. We see a mortality rate is very high. And then when Omicron start, Omicron is faster, 5 times more Delta. We see that the mortality become 50% of Delta wave. And they even predict if there is a 6th wave. And Dr. Anand said we have a 1 month break as April month, then we can start as a 6th wave another time, so we can see that yes.
So this is going to be another wave in summer.
They predict
but
that.
But usually summertime when it's really warm.
No,
it declines.
The problem is COVID-19 not related or the weather may sometimes the hot weather decline the transmission rate.
Maybe this variant is not coping with the
yes,
warm weather?
but that is the point. Sometimes, look, there is a war between a virus and a human being. And virus usually modifying itself.
Of course.
To be more transmitted.
It keeps evolving.
Yes. And it's changed from
its features, yes.
Yes, from its features through change the RNA of itself, of the basis of RNA.
In order
of the
to
virus.
survive.
Yes, in order to survive. When there is a change in RNA of the virus, of basis of the virus, it become a new variant.
Exactly.
Sometimes that new variant may be stronger than the last one or weaker than the last one, according to the variant. So that
And so is the resistance with the seasons of the year.
Yes, that's right.
But then another question might cross the minds of just the layman in the street or normal people, not necessarily scientists or doctors. If it does not at all affect the animals, at all, and it was proved, because many of us have pets, and sometimes we become in direct contact with stray dogs in the streets and cats and animals worldwide. They do not become infected even with their owners when they have the COVID. Doesn't that deliver any message to scientists?
No, it's not like that. You know, COVID-19, even as you said, can hit or can infect animals, by the way, and they discovered that through the scientific researches. But the problem is not all human
not exactly
beings
confirmed, because
having the same immunity. Sometimes there is some animal, and even a little animals in size, having
exactly.
a big,
that is the justification. They have a history
immunity
of something that deprived them of their normal immunity. But talking about the normal, the average animal in the street, or just any other animal, they do not become infected. I mean, that is not a common it is not a common virus between animals and human beings. Just like the dogs, for example, they become infected with the virus of parvo or distemper, but not necessarily the human. So doesn't that evoke something in the minds of scientists to be able to maybe discover something that would help humans?
Yes, these are, it's up to the scientific researches, but when some kinds of these viruses hit human, they look for the origin of that virus, from where it's come, and usually it is a human, it's an animal origin, by the way. Like,
of course, it's an animal origin, because in China like they were eating dogs.
And yes, and
that is not proper, because
no problem, because of no problem for the dogs, but a problem for a human being.
It is not hygiene. I mean, it's not healthy.
Yes,
it's not supposed to be eaten.
And because of that, WHO said or give orders or make scientific papers to avoid some kinds of eats because of that, because you know something like bats containing not less than one bat containing not less than 1,000 virus inside the bat itself.
But they're living with it.
Yes, it's make a neutralizing antibodies with these.
That explains it all. That explains it scientifically.
That's right. So they know how the virus initiated or how it's begin. But the problem is what's its effect on a human being. This is the main problem.
Now we understand why animals don't become infected.
Yes,
it's because they are immune to that.
Yes,
and that's why we should not be eating just any meat.
Yes, that's right. But the problem, by the way, as you say, sometimes if you said that when that people in China eat the bats, the virus transfers through from the bat to the human being. This theory 50% right or 50% wrong, because the virus itself having a certain method of transmission. It must
has
be
a certain cycle.
Through respiratory system.
That was the first one.
This is the first one.
But isn't that totally different with Delta and Omicron?
RNA viruses, as a general, is a respiratory system viruses.
By nature?
By nature. So to eat the virus itself, it
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It must enter the body of through respiratory system, through
and if you could allow me, I could add to you You're very right, sir. It is not transmitted through the digestive
Yeah,
system.
the
Yes,
digestive
it
system.
was digested. Transmitted through the Wuhan
Yes.
wet market in Wuhan,
That's right.
China, where they were dealing with the bats,
with the bats.
that were set for sale, and they
Yes.
were inhaling, and they were in direct contact with the animal.
Yes, but it's the transmission is through inhalation, not
Inhalation.
through eating.
Because this was
is what I'd like
it
to
was
say.
a totally wrong behavior.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
not supposed to be
and even
dealing-
WHO concerned about the kind of animals, not even the dealing of animals, not to eat or not, how to deal with that kind of animal, like bats, for example. Because they know some animals or some birds like bats having a lot of viruses which can having problems like COVID-19. But we can say that we make a good efforts as a government here in Egypt for containing that, and even as Dr. Anand said, the mortality rate is declined very in a low rate. Now we have
Declined lately,
declined,
you mean?
yes, very quickly. And even if there is a next wave, the number of mortality for the sixth wave will be 50% of even the number of mortality of that wave.
really that is confirmed.
Yes, this is confirmed. And that, by the way, help country to, because you know, some crisis like COVID-19 affected badly the economy of the country.
Of course, no doubt.
So that if we manage to decline or to
Or to curb it at
eliminate
least.
something like that, so that you can open the economy, especially because you know now there is a global problems all over the world in the field of economy. So we need to be fast, and even for there is something we're supposed to talk about, which is the third booster dose for COVID-19, because some people now are afraid to take that third booster dose, but recent research has said that especially people who are over 65 years old supposed to take the booster dose, because you know when you take the vaccine, the immunity of vaccine or antibodies which vaccine create in the body stay for some certain period of time, so that every period of time, like 6 months or something like that, you're supposed to reactivate the immunity or antibodies against that virus.
To update it.
To be updated. Not to be updated, to be secure, or to be to have immunity, enough immunity, if you can, because you know even Omicron, some people can hit it by Omicron every 2 months. The same,
even if they're
yes,
infected?
the same infection, because of that immunity. That person doesn't have enough antibodies to fight against the virus. So that these old people, which is over 65 years old, or that people having a problem of immune system, they're supposed to reactivate antibodies against COVID at least after 6 or 3 months from the second dose of vaccination.
3 months after the second dose.
Yes.
You take a third one.
Third booster dose. Even now, USA said that over 18 years old can take that booster dose.
But any side effects?
Sometimes there is, look, in general, by the way, to talk honestly, COVID, as you know, it's come as a normal common cold, a normal common cold, then come to the body. According to the immunity or immune system of the body, there is something called cytokine storm. And all the problems of COVID is because of cytokine storms. If that cytokine storm is very strong and very strong, it can hit any organ of the body.
Right.
It can hit the tissue of the heart and affect the electricity of the heart. And this become a post-COVID syndrome and make some change with the person. So I from your TV show, I advise anybody feel that there is some problems with him after the infection. I mean both COVID infection.
After the infection or after the vaccination?
No, after the infection. Because vaccine give immunity only for the body. But if you have the infection itself, if you feel there is a change in heart rate, for example, or heartbeat, you're supposed to go to the clinics of cardiology.
Right.
To make something called echo, so that if there is something harmful, you can manage to have a medication for it. And sometimes that cytokine storm can hit some organ like kidney. Sometimes it make a skeletal muscle spasm or pain. Sometimes it affects the lacrimal glands or ocular.
Right.
So that we supposed to follow.
Immediately notify the doctor.
Follow that direct to overcome any post-COVID syndrome symptoms, to avoid the bad harmful effect of COVID-19.
Right. On that very important note, Dr. Magdy Adly, you're a senior manager in Health Insurance Authority, and you're also a professor in hospital and total quality management. Would like to thank you so much, sir.
Thank
and
you very much.
God bless you. God bless
Thank
Egyptians.
You. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. And on that note, we're going to be ending it here with Windows and Current Affairs. Many thanks to all of you, and until we see you again next week, that's a goodbye.